Now, we talked a lot about in the previous critique hours what it's like to paint a villain, what you should paint a villain, how you should paint a villain. So we talk a lot about how we should compare the face of the villain and pull from the skeleton, the skull. The skull, the human skull, without flesh, without bones, without anything, is a symbol of death. And something that is devoid of life is something that we like to compare as or attach to something that is evil. Just because something is devoid of life doesn't mean it's evil. You can't really call zombies evil, right? They're just like they're brainless. They don't know what they want to do. They don't know what they're doing, and all they do is they follow their instincts. So we can't really call them evil, but they are void of life, so they are an evil thing, because of the fact that they're taking away life and whatever. So what I'm trying to say is, just because it's void of life doesn't mean it's always evil. But we use that trope, that the skull, drawing someone with no eyebrows, with deep set eye sockets, with saggy skin, with a really thin face. Even if it's a fat person, like Ursula. If you've ever seen the character design for Ursula, she also had a lot of. Let me find it for you. A lot of signatures of the skeleton on her. And we'll see this like repeated over pretty much every real cartoon character that was just like a pure evil, pure enemy. They all pull from that skeleton. This piece of shit. So the skull. So that's what I'm trying to force you guys to learn, to have this in your your utility belt, to have this always. So whenever someone hires you later, these challenges get you ready for that. So you know the aesthetics that apply to drawing a villain, and it's always almost always pulling from the skull. Being dead isn't evil, but adding the death trope to the character makes them feel more like they are void of life, like Voldemort. Well, how did he become Voldemort? By killing a lot of people. Where is he? Where is that no nose bastard? There he is. Because he is void of life because he perverted life to such an extent. And you can't really decide how evil your character is unless you, like, even this newest character, this trope is still being used over and over and over again. Or this redesign of him. She's different, it's all personality. And having that deadness to them, having that anemic look with those really dark circles and that really thin face, it really pulls from the fact that they are void of life. They are void of good. Life is good. Skull is no life. Skull plus evil personality equals true bad. If you want to design a character, you gotta pull from this for us to really believe he's that evil. So there are a couple of places here. I haven't connected my tablet. What do you know? Come here, motherfucker. Excuse me. That little outburst. So unladylike. Okay. Let me just wait till it detects it. Yeah. Okay. So here in this, okay, here in this face right here, what happens is this face is a little bit too feminine. It's a little bit too full of life. And it's because of these reasons. So the eyes are too big. Whoa. The eyes are too big, so we shrunk that. The nose is too equal with the face, so I'm going to enlarge the nose just a little bit to pull from that old man face, because he is old. He's balding and his hair is gray. We need to start making him feel like he's actually old. And so that's it for measurements. Very big eyes, very anime kind of old man. So in anime, even when they draw an old man, he's got like these big beautiful eyes, unless it's a good anime. But yeah, what we want to do is start giving him a little bit more of those age tropes. So what I'm going to do is make the bags under his eyes even larger. I'm going to darken his eyes just a little bit. And on multiply brush mode, I'm going to just throw more darkness around his eyes just like that. I'm going to deepen the laugh lines on the side of his face. And you remember this skull, so let's bring a skull picture here. Skull. um, skull. So right here, these really deep cheekbones right here, the shadow here is what we want to also bring into our character. So if he has this much life in him, he kind of really doesn't feel like an evil scientist that's sort of the master of his work, that's seasoned, that is a seasoned veteran in surgery and whatever that entails, whatever it is that he does. So the way he practices evil through his act. So we want to make him look like he's an old creep. pretty much what you're going for. No matter what you're drawing, no matter who you're drawing, you want to draw old creep. Look through that inspiration folder again and you'll see old creep a lot more now that you look for it. We also want to remove any excess colors. So a skull is a skull in both the fact that it's void of color and flesh. So we want to get rid of that fleshy color. And I'm just going to use, mostly it's the fleshy color, the reds in the fleshy color. So I'm going to get rid of that in the redness in his lips. And I'm going to replace it with a dark shade. Not enough that it doesn't start looking like lipstick though. Darken his teeth. And to bring in that uncanny measurement to the face, what I'm going to do is extend the mouth. It's going to bring in an uncanny laugh, that ogre that we like. Shrink the eye even more, just a little bit more. And he's really going to feel like the enemy. So we're talking like, you guys ever seen The Human Centipede? I've never watched it. I know I'm never going to want to watch it. But that villain, he's still like burned in my mind. I've never watched that movie. But you see the way they chose the actor, they cast the character. We'll see how he looks like he looks exactly like that. He's got those lifeless eyes. Maybe the freakiest thing about him is that his lips were so red. He's so creepy. Poor actor. But yeah, he's got those lifeless eyes, that sagginess to him, that really skull-like boniness to his face. I wish there was another example. So here, really, really skull-like. Let's just compare the two. And that's what you always want to pull from. So where more picked. So they chose the character perfectly because he really did feel like it's not that next time you see someone who has this kind of face, you say, well, this person's capable of murder. It's mostly that when we're drawing and we're the characters, we're the artists who draw the characters, we want to be able to inspire a certain feeling in people. And if we project the image of the skull through the villain, we're going to make people hate the villain because they're going to see death and all that scary stuff in the villain. So he seems like a pretty skinny guy, so I'm just going to thin out his face just a little bit. And from working with that Human Centipede villain, I'm just going to use the exact same kind of proportions. Really, really bony face. Alright, and you'll see how before he kind of looked a little bit too beautiful. And it didn't feel like you were drawing a man, and not a man but a villain, and felt he was too beautiful. His eyes were too big. And after. Before, after. Pulling a lot from the skull. Thinking a lot about how to make this guy more hateful, and to antagonize him, to make him actually look like a villain void of life because of his capacity for murder. Alright, so this is the biggest thing that I wanted you guys to learn from this theme, is how to make someone, with changing their portrait, with changing the face, how to make them read like a villain. Adding just a little bit more. The next thing I would say is I think you should darken this background, this foreground, darken it. Flood this in some sort of spotlight, so the spotlight would really feel like more cinematic. I'm going to get a blue one. And by doing that, we'll kind of refocus the attention on him and then have an actual light presence somewhere. Bad job, but it's okay. So right now the light seems so universal and it doesn't really feel like he's... I mean, you wouldn't do surgery in a... Oh, whoa, why did I just make that many groups? You wouldn't do surgery... Why? Why are you doing this? Okay. Color dodge. Yeah, I guess you wouldn't do surgery. Sorry, I keep losing my thought. In a dark room. But it would really help dramatize this scene a little bit more. Just throw something in like this. This way we're kind of just focusing the attention back to him, thinking like movie directors instead of artists for a sec. And kind of presenting the character after we've thrown all of that, those units of death or kind of lifelessness. Now we have to make the scene imitate that same kind of lifelessness or lack of light. So you're going to have to sacrifice sense, the fact that he wouldn't perform surgery in a dark room, for the drama. So multiply is good. And we're just darkening the foreground just a little bit so that he feels a little bit more evil. Also, another massive thing about the skull, what is it missing? Can anyone tell me what it's missing? That's really important in portraiture that I always talk about. That should have been the promo feature. So what's missing here that we could really, really mess around with in this composition, make it feel more dramatic? I think over-the-top grotesque just doesn't bother me. If it makes me think about myself internally, I find the horror a lot more terrifying. I find the Loki-type villain really sexy most of the time. Probably just me, though. Yeah, his face was also like if you see the way he was filmed, especially that actor's face, really, really strong cheekbones. Again, pulling from that lack of life look. So he was handsome. It's very easy to confuse high cheekbones for handsome, but it's mostly the personality combined with their wicked looking face that kind of completes a successful villain design. Skin, softness, cast shadows. Cast shadows, yeah. The lighting is wrong with the light on the body. It feels it's okay, but it's probably coming from I would have to adjust the whole body. This is a suggestion of light that I'm making. Shadows on his face, hiding what? So this is a shadow here. What are the shadows on his face hiding? So it's not really the nose, it's not the mouth. So to cast even more drama over this, we have to kind of hide his eyes. So before you had his eyes so visible, he also almost felt friendly. But if we darken his eyes just a little bit, he'll really feel like the criminal that he is, performing on people like that. It's just nasty. Alright, so I'm just fixing the face here to match the lighting. Eyes, yes. So we remove the redness. You can keep the redness of the blood. That's also going to add the drama. But it's mostly in hiding the eyes. So if we take a look now at the before, it'll feel like he was just a nice man who sells balloons. Like, whoops. Flatten image. My bad. Almost lost all my work. Thank you, Control Z. So it felt like he was a man, a nice guy. Probably sells ice cream. Poor dude. He's just seen as a really bad guy. But for some reason he does this to people. I don't know. That was kind of even creepier now that I added that story to him. But yeah, these make for a more successful composition. He actually feels like a dangerous person, and it's kind of what I pulled off from when I designed mine. I tried to hide his eyes and make him feel more lifeless. And I wanted to bring in so much more because you're used to me drawing my pretty eyes, and everyone was complaining. Usually you draw such pretty people, but yeah, definitely you have to nix all of those beauty factors. If a beautiful woman has light under her eyes right around here, you got to do the opposite for that, which is the skull, the ogre, everything the opposite of the natural kind of beauty that we're attracted to, the healthy face. You want to do the opposite of that. So I kind of lost some detail when I drew over the eye. Just a little bit. You can add some lights in the eye, so you probably want to show what his eyes are, but you can add some light in the eye to make him feel a little bit more human. But I suggest that you kind of shadow the eyes away. They're bringing too much kindness to his face, and they're moving away from the skeletons. He had that chubby face. He did have the bloody mouth and the creepy look and the angry brows, which is perfect, by the way. The angry brows I haven't touched the brows at all. But this will feel a lot more dramatic and a lot more accessible, I guess, for the audience. Okay, so let's see what his story is. Tell me, are you scared of needles? All he ever wanted to be was a successful surgeon with a happy family of his own. After years of hard work, he became a very well-known surgeon that everyone would request and need. He always had a bit of madness in him, but with the help of his wife Marie, he managed to keep that bad side buried deep inside. After the tragic diagnosis of his wife, the doctor flipped and started experimenting on innocent people to find a cure for his dying wife. Nice. So good story, good backstory. He feels three-dimensional, like he has the capacity to be good. So that's nice. Let's see this one. All right, this is another great one I wanted to compliment on because you really did pull from the skeleton. But one thing I want to excuse me, one thing I want to mention. It feels like a character design from like a World of Warcraft kind of character or a story. Just the whole outfit really feels like World of Warcraft to me. I've never played it, but it just reminds me of it. So one thing I wanted to change is the amount of yellow in his skin. Yellow is a really, really, really neighboring color to pretty much all of the skin tones that we can paint with. So it's too close. It's too close to it. What we want to do is we want to make him feel like a humanoid, but we also want to dehumanize him. So let's take a look at those references again. It's always a balance between a skull and a skull with a little bit of flesh to keep it functioning. Alright, so where do we see this? The skin tone. It's pretty much every villain in here has that skin tone. So it's kind of like a bluish gray skin tone. It's basically the color of death, the color of dead skin, or skin that is dead, of the skin of a dead person. It's just that general lifelessness. So this guy, I don't know what his design is all about. Is he blue? Is he yellow? I don't know. But yeah, the skull is there, so I guess it's doing most of the work. Really, really gray skin, just lifelessness, and a lot of skull, just a lot. Let me just put the picture here, and you guys can just see the comparisons. These are some of. I named this one "Sexiest Villain in History" because me and pretty much every other girl had a biggest crush on him. But yeah, lifeless skin color, really lifeless skin color. This guy was like the symbol of darkness in the story. These guys' face didn't show at all, so lots of dehumanization. This is their face, or this is how their faces were designed, really, really skull-like, and that skin tone. If you want to make it seem like this is the guy who does the rituals to raise the dead and kill innocent children and burn them and send them to sacrifice as a sacrifice to Baal or something, you don't want to give him this kind of friendly-ass skin tone. It's yellow. It's a beige. It's a life. It's a lively skin tone color. What we want to do is gray it out. This will really give us a chance on that gray color to bring in some more color that will complement what we're seeing. So we're going to go straight into the cools. Skip the warms completely and bring that brownish purple in. And I would probably throw that right down here in this area of his eyes to make them feel a little bit more dark. Throw that purple everywhere else where there's a shadow. Not so much, just enough. And when I bring in the highlights, so you are missing some highlights, definitely missing them. So basically just the top of the cube, wherever the cube is. Okay, so on the cheekbones, I'll bring in a white. I won't bring in that yellow that I usually tell you guys to bring in for skin tone because it's just too friendly a color. We want to just bring in as little life as possible. Okay? So I'm actually gonna lighten, get that yellow. So now we're, not the yellow, the white. So now I'm gonna make it a little bit of a bluish white. So I want to pull from a new color to bring in a new color in here, or else it'll just be monochromatic. Why did I deselect? Yeah, there we go. So I'm bringing in that blue, and then we're bringing in that highlight with that blue. And just looking at the navigator, this is where my eyes are. If it looks weird to me here, I don't care. I don't mind it. As long as it reads well on my navigator, I can always blend it to match the navigator. The navigator is like a zoom out. It puts you in God mode to be able to see how these colors really matching. And this passes. This blue is perfect. All I have to do now is just blend it in. So for sake of time, I'm just going to use a smudge brush, but you wanna take your time and build the high points and all of that stuff. Alright, so you see how nice everything looks now. You took away that monochromatic yellow, which is just making him look accessible, making him look human. We're removing all human from him. The only thing that's left is really the skeleton of the human, which is the scariest thing to us. It reminds us of death. And if the audience is there and you're trying to convince them this is a bad guy, what do? You scare the bejesus out of them by making the bad guy look like a skull. Think about it. The skeleton has been visible to all ages of history. You know, well, how did they relate to it? Like, how did they understand it? Like people of ancient times, when they saw a skull, when they saw a skull. But yeah, it's like a universal image, a universal symbol of death. When we draw the angel of death, how does his face look like? So we want our enemies, the enemies that we're putting in our stories, this great epic that we pull from. We pull from the great epic all the time, where the bad guy is the bad guy. It's really very modern and very recent, probably since the modernism's movement in literature and art, that Lucifer started being the good guy, or the fallen angel and all that shit. But before that, it was the great universal epic. The bad guy was as evil as fuck, and the good guy was the best thing that ever happened to the world. So it was really one-dimensional, and that's where these tropes come from. And we have to work with them, whether or not we're going to use them completely, whether or not we're really going to draw that kind of bad guy. Most of the time in movies, we have that full bad guy. Lately, it hasn't been like that. People have been trying to create that confliction between the bad guy and the explanation of why they're evil and all that hullabaloo. But yeah, that blue really, really helped remove the life, but also bring in a new color. I'm actually going to just desaturate one more time. Anywhere the dodge tool goes, it just saturates. So I have to undo its business. Okay. Right, so it's still passing the navigator test. Please keep your eyes on the navigator. If your navigator is not enabled, this is wrong. But yeah, just out of these changes, this guy is starting to read like you're gonna get hired by Blizzard. Like I don't even know what to tell you, bro. This looks exactly like their work. He needs a little bit of a soul patch here, or whatever that thing is called. But let me show you the before and after. So the lips are thin, the nose is high. You got this weird, unnatural, unhuman distance between the nose and the mouth, which is very, very skeletal. You've got the no eyebrows. You've got the weird eyes that are not human. Again, not accessible, not emotionally available eyes. And taken away all that life, the only bit of life you had left with it was this strange yellow color that doesn't belong there. Because if you look at bones are really just, they're kind of just colorless. And to have them have that bright a yellow to them, it's just too much. So we use the blue. You see how effective using the blue is? Instead of getting a yellow or just a pure white. Just getting another chance to bring in that cool. So all my choices were centered around removing the warmth, bringing in the cool, and reinforcing that feeling of death. So I brought that purple in under his eyes, and that pushed the feeling even further. Alright, so if you wanted to use yellow, if you had to use yellow for some reason, you really wanted to keep some yellow behind because that was what you originally imagined or something like that, I would probably place it in the eyes to make the eyes feel a little bit more bloodshot. And that's kind of where I'd put that. But the eyes, really, they can have all kinds of colors in them. I usually like combining cool with cool. It's really fun. Or just a completely new color. Something to match his clothes, because his color coordinates his fashion. But you don't even need it either, because this whiteness in the eyes also kind of seems like that's the only bit of life left in him, the whites of his eyes. Why is the law in place? What are you saying? So let's see what everyone's saying. It's only in video games you can't show it. I just looked up the law. You can't show skulls in China? Oh wow. People are so scared of skulls, man. So in China, the skull is banned. Oh, wow. Giraffe is sexier in my opinion. Who's Giraffe? I like me a sexy villain. Who? Nothing is coming up. What is this? Send me on a wild goose chase. Um, it would be so cool to see some ritual paint on his face. Yeah, that would be cool too. But he seems like he's a nice, tidied up guy. You know, he doesn't seem like he seems like he takes his bath seriously. You know what I'm saying? There's that kind of bad guy that takes his bath way too seriously. The kind that cleans himself up. You know, that kind of villain. On the sides of the head, I'm just going to desaturate just a little more to make it feel like there's an ambience, a cool ambience. I don't think this guy spends a lot of time in the sun. So before, after. So filter, sharpen, filter, sharpen, and sharp mask. I usually use this when I use a soft brush to counteract that softness. Too spooky for China. uh, Skulls are not censored or banned. Too many bubbles. So any questions on this before and after? Any questions? Before I go on to the next thing. If you guys don't ask any questions, it means I've explained really, really well. And if I've explained that well, then none of you, no, it's Rack, you're just fucking up. None of you should come back to the class because y'all learned everything, right? Because y'all got no questions. No time in the sun, aka my white ass. Thanks for your analysis. Help me. Was this yours, Jonas Gustafsson? He looks rad, so no. Okay. I would just completely remove all of the color from his face. But when I did mine, I also had a little bit of skin tone left over, just so that he can seem like he's a humanoid type deal. But I did that exact method. I used purple in the eyes. I used gray mostly because I wanted him to feel old, like he's older than he says he is, and he says that he's pretty old, so he's much older than that. Kind of like a necromancer, kind of stupid ass guy who steals fairies and stuff. What about his pose? His pose is good. It kind of feels like he's a leader or a priest leader or something. It feels a little stiff, but I can't really complain about it. As for from a character design perspective, the template should really just be a standing person. It shouldn't really be a pose. If you wanted to go full pose, it's like you went creative only in the hand, but everywhere else was the character design stiff, like the stiff look for the character design. Why isn't this working? Okay, there it is. So it feels like here you have that nice character design turnaround happening, but then you only move things here. If you really want to make him feel like he's moving, give him more personality, and of course you can use gestures to make them feel more alive. Of course you wouldn't use like open gestures. You'd probably want to use closed gestures. You probably want to use a lot of C's to show that that lifelessness. Even when they're really, really strong, you want to show a little bit of that lifelessness. So let's take a look at where that happens. White orc images. When he's standing, he has this haunch about him. So he is a big brute, but I don't know which scene it was, but he still stood like a big haunched that ass. Sorry. He still stood like a total he had that really closed gesture about him whenever he stood. Wow, holy crap. Is this a drawing? Beautiful. Where is it? I don't know which scene it is. It's the one when we first see him. He looks like a big muscly guy, but he has that haunch. Maybe we can see it in this fan art here. But you see the skin tone as well was also used here. And this is high-end cinema, and they're still using these tropes. Just trust me, you're going to benefit from making your character feel very, very lifeless. You're going to benefit from the no eyebrows, no life look. And he's an orc, so he's like a very corrupted elf, or once was an elf. And he became kind of just like his whole body was just changed by evil. He was so evil his body changed. So I can't find that gesture example, but I might be able to look for it after and post it. Okay, I wanted to talk about this girl because she's a female, so we want to preserve as much of the beauty as possible, and then have her only be a bad guy with her personality. But when this cunt right here. I'm so sorry. When when this woman became eventually very evil in the story, she started getting those dark circles and that messy hair. She didn't look very pretty. So you have to ask yourself, at which stage are you in the bad guy? Is it a fully realized bad guy and he's the white orc and he has history and he's just fully corrupted and he's a total jackhole? Or is he halfway there? Or is he premature in his bad guyness, or his journey as the bad guy? So where do we find a character that is not fully realized bad guy yet? So over here, they definitely use that haunch. Do you see? I think this is a good example of that closed gesture. Very little flamboyance in the way they walk. I guess I gave you references for fully realized bad guys. Maybe this guy wasn't that bad. Kind of didn't feel like he was that evil compared to people who are like him, who is completely and fully realized. But this is a Disney movie. Still very, very evil, though. His personality was cruel. This guy wasn't a fully realized bad guy. He kind of still had a lot of personality in him. So you can see Electro. You can see early on, as soon as he's becoming, like right here, you see that the expression is kind of gone. He has more of a human expression. But the more he becomes evil, the less he has movement in his eyebrows. So the less movement in his eyebrows. The less movement in general, they feel very stiff, and it's okay to make them stiff because a skull is stiff. A skeleton is stiff. So when we're thinking about making a female still have beauty, but also we want to bring in that lack of flamboyance, that lack of excessive beauty, we have to use some of the skull and leave the rest to the stiffness of her character. If you've ever seen the White Witch, she's still very, very beautiful. She's a beautiful enemy, but she has no eyebrows, and that here you've added lots of eyebrows and eyeshadow. So what you could do is remove the eyeshadow and just leave the eyebrows. It's kind of just looking like a Beyonce costume. Doesn't really feel like she's an enemy. I want her to feel like an enemy. And she kind of is very vain, so she's dressed herself up. So how can we exaggerate that vanity, but also keep reminding people of the skull and keep scaring them and pointing them in the right direction with the design? So let me get that skull back here. You guys can just have a look at it while I make these changes. So the first thing I'm going to do is just remove the life from her lips. This is a makeup choice that we can do that still keeps people looking pretty, but it's also not really a good look to have it completely white. To have the makeup have the lips completely colorless. It's kind of like a bad look, but since she's a bad guy, we can do it. So I'm going to remove the color from her lips, leaving only the dark spots. So she'll still look beautiful, but we're making her makeup friendly skull beauty. So she can still be admired as a sort of source of beauty in the story, or a vain woman that pursues her vanities, but still is capable of murder, or is the worst of the worst. And by reading her stories, she seemed like a total bitch. Wanted to kill her sister and stuff. Okay. So the lips wouldn't get this much highlight on them unless the rest of the body is getting some light. And what we can do now is either extend this eyeshadow here to really, really reflect that skull image. And now she feels way more intimidating for me. And hide her eyes just a little bit, shadow them, so that we can push that skull feeling. Or we can get rid of that and leave only the brows. I recommend just hiding away her eyes, leaving only a little bit visible. This way, when you hide the eyes, the antagonist is a lot less emotionally accessible to us as the viewer. So we feel they're more dangerous, and the success of the creature design, the character design maximizes. It actually feels like a bad guy. We don't like them because they remind us of death. Okay. And then this area here of the nose should not. She can have all the beautiful features she needs, but we have to somehow, using makeup, manipulating some shadows, keep reminding people of the skeleton. I'm just trying to remove all life from her eyes. Sometimes removing the light in the eyes is also a great way to dehumanize a character. So all we have is the mid-tone of the pupil. And that zoned out look, that's really nice, what you had, because it wasn't a focused eye, the eyes weren't slightly crossed. So does this not feel more evil? Like she is more evil, she is less friendly. Where before she felt a little friendly. Or it was like a Vogue kind of editorial makeup shoot or something. Now that we removed the emotion from her face, replaced it with the symbol of the skull to influence the way we've chosen certain props and stuff. Design choices are all influenced by the tropes. Write that back to me. And then we need to cast the shadow of these eyebrows as well. They're large enough to cast a shadow which will extend the shadow of the skeleton eyes even further. Can making them not human in the eyes, like cat eyes, make a character more evil? Yes, changing the way the anatomy, changing eye anatomy, it makes them feel less human, which makes them feel, we're very vain, because we're pretty much the only things with a conscious right now. I think apes have a conscious. I don't know, but we're very vain. So whatever doesn't look like us is ugly. Period. Even the reason why we relate to animals that are beautiful is because they're basically made in our image. They've got 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth. And usually the animals we love the most are the animals that are the cutest, that have that triangle trope, which we have as well, that we admire in our own species, which is the large eyes, small nose, small mouth. So what you have here is that. So we're trying to counteract that beauty trope that you have here. She's too beautiful to feel like an enemy. So let's take a look at some female enemies that we've seen depicted in cinema. So there's that one girl, bad guy. But we know how they do men. Guardians of the Galaxy. That one girl, the blue girl. Images. Where is she? This one right here. They kind of just made her eyes completely dark, and there's no color everywhere else. So she was very pretty, but she looked like a corpse basically. And she had the blackened eyes. So she was very, very her eyes were just completely blacked out. What happens when you black out the eyes and you still have that beauty trope, so you still have the triangle, feels like it's an inhuman thing. It's not human. Some people say that the scariest image they've ever seen is that one girl that was caught underwater. So terrible. That was caught underwater for such a long time. Her eyes became completely bloodshot. And this picture has terrified people. People have had trauma because of that image, because at that moment she was dead. And that's because her eyes were completely blacked out. So what I recommend to get rid of that feeling that we have here, that beauty, or to counteract it with another symbol, is to further that skull symbol even more and just darken her eyes, make her feel very inaccessible. There's also the option of completely blacking out her lips, but I'm worried that there's going to be too much makeup used here, so it's not going to feel as dangerous. But again, it's a female, so look out when you're designing the females, the female enemies. You really have to bring in some ogre in there. Lots of ogre here. Sorry, actress. Lots of ogre. Where is she? Right here, very big lips. So she had all of that makeup. She had all of that stuff that suggested she was a woman, but I think the way to kind of push the feeling that she's an enemy, I think I would enlarge her lips. I would just widen them. It would feel a little bit more masculine. And when we remove the beauty from an enemy, we kind of just, whether it's through masculine, through making them look dead, through the masculine trope, through the inverted triangle or whatever, or the triangle, we still manage to make them look less beautiful. So it isn't always about making them look like men. And then there's the fact that we have to make them look sick, so the lack of life. She probably stays up at night plotting away the death or the murder of her enemies. So I would definitely add in some um, the thingies, the saggy bits under the eye that I have, because I'm an evil enemy. The eye bags, and then darken them even further. She's starting to feel more like an enemy that is really connected to their religion, probably covets power. It's very beautiful if you look at her, but we're trying to reinforce that feeling of death across her. So I asked you guys to paint a villain. I didn't ask you to paint an anti-hero. I asked you guys to draw me a villain, because this is what's going to help you. It's going to remind you later when you're hired by some company to design villains for them, to design a character for them. You know to the extreme that you've designed before, so you know exactly what to pull from. If they're an anti-hero, let the story take care of that. But as for now, as far as we're concerned, we're the artists who make these choices. And I'm going to work from the skeleton because I know these tropes work. They're called upon a lot. They're used a lot in cinema and games, even today. Next really, really awesome thing that I could do is extend this eyeshadow even lower. So she's still a very beautiful woman, but she's got that lifelessness about her. So zoom out all the time so you know exactly how much you need to diffuse shadows or how much you need to darken them. Another thing you could do is give her some of these lines, which will really remove that excessive beauty she has. If you're stuck drawing females, the next time you draw a male, you're going to make them look like a female. You really have to know how to break the female tropes in your drawings, in your portraiture. Or else you're just going to be drawing females for the rest of your life. You have to be a versatile artist. Maybe she's doing a scowl because she's jealous. Or something like that. So she still has the triangle. She's still got those strong cheekbones. She has those plump lips, but she's an evil cow. It's because we've applied all of these units to her design. Alright? Whoa. Just sharpening it up. So let's take a look at the before and after. You'll see what I meant by that Beyonce costume. It just felt like a pretty girl in some Vogue editorial makeup, especially because of the feathers. But when you bring in the skull and you bring in the skeleton, you really start making a whole different kind of person. You get a whole different kind of character, which will match their actions. So if you read her actions, let's take a look at this character, what they do. So they're usurpers. They want to take the crown that their sister has inherited. She gathered an army of followers and burned down the old tree where she was born. So basically a tree equivalent to that from Avatar, so the home tree. So total bitch. And Deja found her sister smiling at her. With an ice-cold expression, she took her spear and pierced the heart of her sister. So murderer, pretty much. And you don't want to give them, this pretty kind of face. I really recommend darkening out her face completely, showing that she's devoid of life. So again, just like the story behind Voldemort, he's void of life because he took life, and every murder sent him further and further into death, further and further into his own vanities, into his own evils. We really want to bring in more of the skeleton. Whenever a character goes to the level of murdering someone, you want to design them that way, or else you're just designing a pretty girl in some dark makeup. You want to bring in a real danger to them. So that's the key word. Everyone write it back to me. Danger, intimidation. We want them to feel like they're capable of death and murder. Okay, so this is kind of like the brute enemy, the big bad guy, kind of like equivalent to the bad guy from Surf's Up. Really hilarious. I love him so much. Tank, I think he was called. He was so offended because he was called Peckerface. It's so cute. But mercy, does a lion care about its prey? Prey's family, does a shark think about its victim's life? No, neither do I. So just like kind of like the mountain from Game of Thrones, just a big brute. Not really schemer. He's not really smart. So here, this kind of brings me to my next point about villains, their intelligence. So typically this is what we do. This is the kind of the design principle in animation as well. You have a big Neanderthal kind of character. So Pinky and the Brain, think about Pinky and the Brain. The brain had a massive head and a small body. I don't know how they drew him. So his focus, he had a very scrawny body. His focus was on the brain, the fact that his name was Brain. So the more poindextery the enemy is, the larger their head should be. Which is really, really cool that they managed to find such an awesome actor for a human centipede villain. Images. So his head felt huge. He just felt like a Poindexter, you know? This guy got bullied in school. So this is what we want to do. We want to give the smart guy a scrawny body and a big fat head. But the mountain and the big brute. So this is not a good example. The first mountain they had, the original mountain, had such a tiny little head. But typically, if we want to exaggerate this guy as a caricature, what we do is we draw the top part of his cranium and then we draw the lower part to be bigger. So he starts looking like a brute. So what I wanted to do is shrink this a little bit more. And I like that you have no neck, so he's got none of that scrawny silhouette. He has no neck, which is good. You've exaggerated it even more with the fur. Kind of reminding me of Sabretooth. So yeah, there's that kind of enemy. So there's their intelligence. Most likely this guy hasn't spent a lot of time in books, but he spent a lot of time pumping iron. So he can be big and strong, so he can kill everybody. So what I'm going to do is, there's that kind of enemy. You know, that one-sided kind of enemy that can be good and can be a big gentle giant, or can be the biggest asshole like the mountain. It's just a big bully. Simple one-sided bully. It's okay, I'll get the old eyes back. I'm just shrinking the head. Okay. This is not working. Just chill, chill, liquefied, chill. Chill, bro. Yes. Okay. So I shrunk the head even more, but I'm gonna erase the new eyes so his head feels a little bit larger. I mean, eyes feel a little bit larger. And then there's that. The fact that his eyes are really, really pretty, really large, really just beautiful face. We don't want that in a villain, especially if he's a big jerk that doesn't care about his victim's life, you know, to that extent. He's an ogre. He's a big, fat ogre. Now tell me if you've seen any ogres with really pretty, beautiful eyes and the way they design the Lord of the Rings characters, unless it's like a mouse face, and it's like a creepy ass mouse face. So I'm increasing the size of bringing in more ogre, basically. I'll give him a scowl like that, a one-sided scowl. Probably give him that Neanderthal brow, one brow really high. You ever seen Avatar, that last airbender? You know, the rock, the boulder? The boulder. Yeah, so that you can pull from that as well, the way they designed it, which is really small eyes and that kind of face. Really, we can give him massive cheekbones. I mean, think about the white orc. You can still give him these humongous ass cheekbones. Not ass cheekbones, just humongous cheekbones, and make him have that handsome face. A lot of girls have had their fair share of crushes on that hunky son of a bitch. But before, after. Do you see what happens when you don't know the difference between the triangle of the female face and the normal of the upward pointing triangle, the upward triangle, the upturned triangle of the male face? So the ogre, small eyes, big nose, bigger mouth. Or before, you had the opposite of that. He looks so cute. I know people come in this kind of face. I know people have this kind of face, but when you're designing a character who you want the audience to have that kind of reaction to, you don't give them big, beautiful My Little Pony eyes. You give them a brute's face, kind of face devoid of life. So this is where we start bringing in the skull. So we brought in the ogre. Let's bring in some more of that skull of death. This guy is not only a brute. You can have a brute good guy that has this face, okay, but we wanted him to be a brute bad guy. So this could very well be a good guy if I didn't know any better, if the story didn't tell me. How do I show my audience this is a bad guy without the story? Can anyone tell me what to do? How do I show this is the bad guy without ever having to look at the description? Whatever word. Who is this? Abu, you know what to do when someone starts trolling in the chat. Just block that guy. Just delete. Goodbye. But yeah, if anyone's causing trouble, just get rid of it. Or get rid of them. There are rules if you want your art to look realistic and believable. Shadows in the eyes, yes. Everyone focus, focus. What should I do to make him look evil? I'm not talking just, this could be a good guy. I'm saying, how do we make him look like a brute and kind of guy who crushes his enemy's face with his hands? So like basically the mountain. Show his skull. Scars. Use the skull. Excellent. Use the skull. Good job, Asma. More skull and death, darkness to him. Okay, good. So how do we do that? Well, first of all, he's got too much light in his eyes just off the bat. I'm seeing too much. All right, and then I'm just going to throw that darkness right here. He's starting to feel a lot more evil. Just by darkening the face, suddenly they've become so mysterious and just dangerous, mysterious and intimidating. This character, like sometimes when you're animating and you want to carry a certain prop with the character, you'll animate that dark circle in there too. That dark circle becomes just as important as their costume or their outfit. So this is stuck with this character forever because we want him to feel like a bad guy. We want him to feel like he's void of life, and the fact that the mountain is a zombie, that's even worse now. The mountain is a real enemy now. He feels like a real threat. When I think about the mountain from not Lord of the Rings, from Game of Thrones, I feel a genuine fear of his character. What is he capable of doing? That he's done so much already. He's a fucking brute. But because now he has that further lack of life in him, what an amazing writing choice just in general. It's just a good choice, a good thing to do with that much of a brute. He's not even human anymore. He's just an asshole. A dead asshole. Ew. So another thing that you're kind of doing too much of, the eyebrows seem a little expressive. So let's look at a brute that wasn't a bad guy. So Khal Drogo. Okay, so this guy wasn't a brute bad guy. Look at how much of his eyes we're seeing. And so he was a brute, total asshole too. A lot of the skull in his face. But those eyebrows really are letting him feel very emotionally available for us. He does a lot of there are a lot of expressions as he talks later on, at least. Early on, he's just a one-dimensional dude. Okay, but his eyebrows feel very expressive. Also, his face isn't that dead. He's got a lot of the feminine in him, so that's why everyone thinks he's so handsome. But early on, especially, his eyes are just so closed out. But it's mostly the eyebrows that keep him accessible to us. Imagine him without eyebrows and with the eyeshadow. At that moment, he'd really feel scary. So I'm going to get rid of the brows, or at least some of them. Trust me, it's a good choice because what's going to happen is we can do all that expression just from the brow bone. But I want him to feel evil. My art director's telling me this guy's got to feel evil. And I read the passage and I'm thinking about the character. So I'm making a choice to reflect a lot of the skull in him. Now he feels like this guy's beyond saving, At no point is he ever going to turn into a gentle giant. This guy is just an asshole. Just a dead asshole. That's what the mountain is. Okay. So I'm going to remove some of the color in his lips. Even the shadow, I'm going to make it just zero reflective. Just want to make him look and feel ugly. Alright, so his lips feel a little full to me. I'm going to bring in more of the skeleton that way and just make his lips feel a little thinner. So is everybody with me? Does everyone have any questions? Everyone please focus on the video. Don't chat too much. Please. I know it's an online class, but please focus. Alright. Gonna give him a couple cuts in his lip just to break that beauty even further. His eyes still feel so beautiful. I just want to get rid of that makeup. That's the thing with Khal Drogo. He felt so pretty, you know. It felt like a Maybelline commercial. Like, I'm sure there's a Maybelline meme on this guy. Where is it? Come on. Come on, there has to be a joke about how he's like the next face of Maybelline, right? Makeup. Nah, this is just gonna come up with just people trying to pull the look, but I don't know. So much makeup is used, and I don't want it to feel like makeup. So what I'm trying to do here, the point of that was to get rid of this this line, this lash line. So this guy kills his enemies and feels nothing, right? So we want to get rid of any makeup that might make him feel something, make him feel pretty. Bringing in more of that skull, so he still feels like a brute. Definitely working off your aesthetics, the choices that you made. We're not taking away from them. All we're doing is complementing the choices you already made with more of the tropes that are out there in the world. So you guys can go ahead and argue till you're blue in the face that these tropes aren't there, but they're there. They're everywhere. They're used by all kinds of cultures to represent death, to represent danger, to represent evil, to represent the devil. The devil's always drawn some sort of skeleton-looking guy or demon-looking guy with a skeleton kind of face, really skinny, lifeless, fatless. So these are the tropes, and if you want to be a successful character design artist, you have to learn one of these tropes, which is the tropes for evil and the tropes for death, and that's definitely the skull. Thinking about death in the tarot cards are an amazing place to go to see the universal images of things. So you should go to the tarot cards, take a look at how the drawings have been over the years, have been represented over the years. And death, of course, is represented by a skull, or the Grim Reaper. Alright. And I really just want to make him have that Neanderthal brow. So filter, actually I just touched on so this is a character design, so all I really touched on is the face so far. Don't have time to go through every single one, but I'll try to at least showcase them, show them off a little. Just generally the body feels a little bit like it feels like cliche choices in the character design. Feels like a Street Fighter kind of character. I recommend reworking the boots, making him feel, again, that's just another one of those big brute bad guys. Another example of a big brute bad guy is from SpongeBob SquarePants movie. SquarePants. Spiky boots guy. Where is he? Oh yeah, right here. When he took off his stuff, that had that zoom up of him. He looked so creepy. But yeah, they had the same thing, really dehumanized kind of look to him. I forget where it's from. But yeah, his facial features are hidden. He's got those kind of cliche choices for a bad guy, like the spiky armor type thing. And you just want to stay away from that because it's used too much. But also, I like how they hid his face, so maybe hiding a part of his face would also help you. So what do you think a brute would wear? A brute would wear stuff that makes him feel even more strong, that gives off the illusion. I mean, this guy totally takes steroids, you know? Like he just, like, you know, stabs that needle in his ass proudly. So I feel like you should make some design choices that feel less tribal, because I don't think he's tribal, and this is a little bit too 90s kind of. It's not really a clothing design that we see anywhere outside of irrational clothing or costume designs from Final Fantasy and stuff like that. So I really recommend making him wear something that makes him even more strong. So this guy thinks he's the strongest motherfucker in the world, right? The guy who thinks he's the strongest motherfucker in the world would naturally dress to make himself even more strong. So probably a heavyweight kind of armor, really, really crazy kind of armor. It can be one-sided, it can be cool looking, but just something that is heavyweight. Heavyweight everything, a heavy sword, a heavy weapon, something that'll complement how strong his upper body is. It's a big brute, no brains. So how does a guy like that make himself stronger? Definitely by not wearing a fur vest. So this is I recommend getting rid of this if you want to throw this on your portfolio. Really think about what choices, what fashion choices or lack thereof would this guy make? Would he choose fashion? That's really the question here. Would he choose fashion, which is this, over function, which is to make himself stronger? So yeah, he definitely would, in my opinion, a guy this is that whose quote is mercy, does the lion care about its prey family? Like, this guy would not be worried about fashion whatsoever. He'd be wearing big ass armor. Doesn't care if it doesn't match. He's gonna wear it. He doesn't give a rat's ass. Probably wear all gray just so that he can avoid having to color code his fashion choices. Oops. So I didn't do the before and after. Flatten. Okay. So before, after. So let's take a look at those. Before, after. It's all skeleton. The skull helped us make these choices. The skull helped us come closer to an image of him being a total bad guy. And maybe if you tried to push it, he could still potentially be a good guy too. But when it comes to a brute, too often do we see that gentle guy. That sometimes that trope is kind of layered. So the bad guy who is just nothing but bronze is really not that scary. He's not that scary to me. But a bad guy who has a little brains to him and some brawn, that's when it starts getting scary. So he feels a little one-dimensional all around. But we definitely did make him feel a lot more intimidating than before. And he feels a lot more scary all around. So I'm going to close that. Take a look at another female in a second. So let's take a look away from the brawn, more to the scrawny schemer. The scrawny schemer. If life gives you hell, make sure to give some hell back. He was an ordinary guy that got accidentally in contact with a very powerful blue energy that destroys everything around him, killing all that he loved. It even destroys him from within, causing terrible pain constantly. Okay, so like a sufferer, a zombie kind of guy. Okay. Even more so when he uses it. But by now, it's also the only thing that keeps him alive. So he's got a lot of resentment to the world and thought the natural things to do is to destroy when that's the nature of his powers. Okay, so he's like a victim of circumstance. He's halfway to being the enemy, so he's not fully realized. Probably once the whole power eats him up, that's when you can make him into a real Voldemort kind of character where he's not halfway there, he's fully realized. Like that moment when Voldemort comes back in the fifth movie and he just like, he's like, Cinderella when she got her dress and she did that arm gesture. That's kind of what he did. He was just like alive, like born. That's when he was fully realized. But before, when he was a teenager, when he was just starting out, it's probably a little something like this. We still want to bring back, want to take away from the flesh color of the skin. I think this character design is really dependent on the story. So I'm going to start taking away from that flesh color so that any red we do show in those blisters or those cuts, it actually is like it really feels bloody, really feels like an injury. So I'm going to saturate any reds that I see and desaturate anywhere that is not a cut. That way you really, you're seeing flesh colors you're not supposed to see. And then of course, as you guys know the drill. Bringing in more of the skeleton and using a purpley color all around. Under the eyes, cheekbones, this guy's dying. I'm sure the energy that he's using has eaten all his fat. And I know this is sad, but you guys can look up anorexic faces and kind of use them to pull from them to kind of enhance your enemy. Because that's really when you lose all the fat in your face, you're really losing all the life. When you don't eat, you start looking like a skeleton. Beautiful job on the new eyebrows, though. Really feels like he's dying. But if you've ever seen someone also really sad, so fair warning, someone who's taking chemotherapy, that thing is just the death itself. I don't know why people put themselves through that, but it's effective, I guess. But yeah, also really just ages the person. So it's aging as well as it's removing life. And that's why we don't really associate old people faces with beauty, because they're aging, they're closer to death. So they start looking more and more like skeletons. Sad to say, but that's our destiny. That's all of our destinies. To look like a skeleton and eventually be one in the ground. Yay! Happiest class ever. But this glow, if it's supposed to be a glow, then make it glow. Bring in a no man's land color. Remember, no man's land is only allowed when you're doing a like a glow or a light source. So you can go ahead and use that glow. Kind of really dehumanizes him as well. I'm going to use some more shadow to show on the sides of the nose, which is not something I usually promote, but there's no fat. So the nose is even more skeletal. And then some laugh lines as well to make him feel a little bit more old, but not too deep because he's not that old. He's not actually old. He's just a young kid. Made some bad choices. Okay, so I'm bringing more of that skeleton in. There's that highlight at the top of the brow bone right here. So I'm bringing some of that in as well. But we're all skeletons deep inside, yes. On a side note, remember that this class is about mastering the fundamentals of art. It's not feedback and learning about your mistakes, not being praised. It's about feedback and learning about your mistakes, not about being praised, yeah. Honestly, if you're here to be praised, I don't know, you couldn't have chosen a worse place to go to be praised for your art. You can just go ahead and skip yourself onto Fur Affinity and just get praised. You know what I'm saying, guys? You know what I'm saying? I'm so sorry. I don't hate furries, I just don't understand them. That's okay, because not everyone likes them. Not everyone likes what I like. So it's okay. But yeah, if you've come here to be praised, or wherever that conversation, whatever's happening in the chat right now, clearly you're not focused on this. But yeah, you couldn't have chosen a worse place to go. This is about constructive criticism and really facing your weaknesses head on. A place that doesn't tell you that you're, as amazing as you think you are, but tells you what you can do to improve to be as amazing as you want to be, or as you think you are. So again, just pushing that skeleton feeling as much as possible. I'm going to give him a squint to his eyes right along here to show how he's kind of closing in on the madness of all that suffering, because it can make you very, very mad. Yeah. A little too much distraction. Take it easy. There's so little pixels I can't even have to make. It's like pixel art right now. Got any more damn pixels? Just want to make him squinting like in pain. This is really sad, by the way. And then now for the colors, I'm just going to bring in some greens and purples, staying away from the warms completely. There's no blood in this guy left. So purples under the eyes right along here, which start to act a lot like grays. And then some green around the lips. Enough of that red. No more red, just green. So now he feels evil, he feels like he's not just suffering like a poor kid suffering. No, this guy believes in the evil power that's corrupted him, and it's turned him into death. It's turned him into the angel of death, not really like a merciful angel of death, but like a death, like agent of murder and corruption and whatever. So now he feels evil. Before he felt like a really, really skinny Russian kid. I say that only because I have a Russian friend who looks exactly like this. I think he's a ginger, or he's so blonde you can't see his eyebrows. But yeah, a little bit of this really pushes the evil in him, brings that out. We're working a lot from these that I gave you on purpose. I gave you these on purpose. See that dark around her eyes? This wasn't accidental. They didn't just stumble on this choice. They made this choice on purpose. All right? This guy especially, you see those extra little bags under his eyes. He feels dangerous. He feels evil. Well, this guy is just a skull. Skeletor. His name is Skeletor. He was one of the most famous enemies in the world. This guy's eyes have been inverted, so they're not white and black on white. It's white on black. And that's dehumanized his eyes, made him feel more skeletal because this is black. It feels like the socket of a skull. This guy has no face. He's just all sass. He's fucking diva Sauron. This guy is a total bad guy. Again, inverted, white pupil, black iris, I think. Black whites of the eyes. No eyebrows. So you see, it's all repeated. These are tropes that we call on when we design. This guy wanted to feel a little more human, so he was like the way they designed characters in here. They didn't want to make them too scary. I think they just made him. They gave him that extra little, you see remnants of the skull, the black smoker lips, all of that stuff. Well, these guys are just the hottest things in the world before they take their mask off. Just keep your mask off, baby. Keep your mask on, baby. Yes, constantly these tropes are being pulled from for these character designs. I want you guys to constantly keep your mind around the tropes. Never think you can design an enemy with really bright, sparkly eyes that are so pretty and depend only on the personality. They got hairspray and they combed his hair down. They got makeup that is a little red and mauve and they threw that on his face. They got more makeup and put it on his lips. These, you don't just get the actor and throw them in there and hope that the murders feel dangerous. No, he looked sick. He looked yellow. If you ever watched No Country for Old Men, this guy looked sick. He actually looked like he was, a cancer patient or something. Really, no offense to anyone who has cancer. I'm just saying, like, he didn't look healthy at all. And these are actual, he sat in a makeup chair and they brought makeup and they put the makeup on him. If you see this guy in real life, he does not look like that. His skin is a lot more alive, a lot more healthy. This dude as well. And we're back to Voldy. Alright, so please remember these tropes. They're going to help you make changes in your portfolios, make your portfolios stronger. Now let's take a look at everyone's design. So this is awesome. This guy, I feel like he's just a bad guy with his personality. This is why bad guys like Kovira, Cora. Let's hope it just comes up. Oh my god, please don't give me Kovira X Cora fan art. I knew it. But yeah, she was just, I didn't understand this character. Like this evil scene, okay, maybe here they used it really nicely. They have that skeleton shadow on the eyes. She felt evil. She felt like a little cunt. But like everywhere else, she just felt like a diva, And that's why I didn't feel so afraid of her. I didn't feel in danger of her. But that initial bad guy in the first season, he really felt dangerous. So here's an example of an enemy that is all personality. And those aren't always the most successful enemies. If you want an enemy that really feels like they're going to kick your ass and they're going to drag your ass to hell and they're going to torture you some more in hell, you have to start adding some sort of influence of their choices in their past. The story is there for a reason. Unless they're halfway there, I'm sure this person, if she became the dictator or whatever and she achieved her goal, she would have probably started to look a lot more like Saddam Hussein. Anyways, you want to make him look more evil. You want to make him, God, I get sidetracked so badly. You want to make him look more devoid of life. The choices in his past have changed his face. He looks tired. He looks worn down by the sins of his past. So yeah, okay, don't bring the skull in, but I'm just going to add a little bit more of this eye bag right here. I'm going to make it puffy. This guy stays up at night thinking about all of those innocent people that he killed that he once saved, because that's the storyline. So yeah, you can make him human, you can have the human skin, you can have all of that. But I want to make him look like he's just weighed down by the people he's killed, and yeah. I'm Arab. I don't bash people. What? I am Arab. My whole life was influenced by Saddam Hussein, that piece of crap. So I want to make him look tired. I want to pull from that real life villain. So this is more realistic. It's not really fantastical. These aren't orcs and elves and ogres. So I want to make him look more tired. Just, being evil just causes that much pain, that much fatigue. You kind of lose weight. Probably don't have time to put powder on your nose, so you're a little bit more shiny everywhere else. That's going to spike that value up there and pull from the skeleton just a little bit, just by that liquid. I'm gonna remove the color from his lips. I'm sure he smokes. Maybe he's one of those really, really hygienic enemies that doesn't believe in smoking, but I'm still gonna take that away. I want him to feel like he's a bad guy. So just thinking about Saddam Hussein, kind of thinking about the way he looked old and tired, kind of dealing with the choices of his past, which is what this guy is, if I read correctly. I would also lower, probably thin out the brows a little bit, just around the edges, just where it starts to thin out. Eyebrows start to thin out at the edges. I would probably lower the brows like all the way down. I don't know if I can pull this off. Let me try. Okay. So when you are drawing a realistic villain, not realistic, but pulling from the real world, just look for dictators from the real world. Look at how they looked like, how they behaved. I mean, they're either over-groomed or under-groomed. And like Hitler, man, this guy was groomed. He was just so groomed. He's a monster. He managed to, this is a yeah, he managed to rationalize, such horrendous acts, but he's so groomed. Look at his eyebrows; they're all thinning. Like, this guy was the face of death. Like, I'm not saying anything against German people or how they look, or what the standard look is or the average face is for German people, but this guy's eyebrows were thinning. Just the pictures, the way the pictures were, especially, just very skull-like. You even see like the mustache was so skull-like. But yeah, that when you're drawing a realistic villain that isn't coming from a fantastical world or world full of magic, think about their story and how much dirt and mess is in their heart, and how they try to comb over that with being too groomed and too clean. And you can still see great influence of, void of life. I mean, when do you see this guy smile? He probably thinks a smile is a sign of weakness, like Dwight. If you show your teeth, you're a weakling. So I'm just giving him a little bit more age. This guy is well into his development as an antagonist. So me as the artist, I'm going to make some choices that makes him look a little bit more tired, all around, seasoned in his journey to be the evil of the world. Alright, so let's take a look at the before and after. Before, after. Considering his story, he could also be a bad guy. A good guy. That's the thing about drawing realistically, pulling from realistic influence, a world without magic, sorta. You just have to make them look a little bit more tired. This is kind of pulling from the skeleton really, really good. I'm kind of just generally creeped out about him entirely, and I think it's because he did it really well. He really feels like a bad guy. He reminds me of Yzma from Emperor's New Groove, who was a skeleton. Yzma. Yeah, she was just death. She was just walking death. Even the upturned nose, she looked like a skeleton. Beautiful character design, though. Honestly, it's just one of the best I've ever seen. And it's animated so well. But yeah, he's so groomed. He looks so pretty. And that's really what's creeping me out. But good job on the no eyebrows, the laugh lines, the skeletal-like face. He really does creep me out. So an enemy that's pretty, I guess we can use this one. I don't have much time left. Oh, I really wanted to talk about this guy. He's so cute, but he's also evil. So here, I guess, you gotta remove the emotion in their face, and you have to, if you have to draw a beautiful kind of character that is an enemy. So she's kind of beautiful, so what we're doing is we're going back to that editorial look, and we're really pushing the skull. And if you want them to have all the fat and they're like this happy-go-lucky enemy, you have to remove some color in their face. So I would recommend this cheekbone for her. This is just basically, they actually look like a skeleton, which is good, like an evil deity. This guy here is a little too cute, but his skin is purple, so I don't know. I think you need to make some... I think this is just one of those cartoons that you have to just accept, so it's not really that strong a character design because he doesn't feel evil. One thing you could do to keep him handsome but also make him evil is just darken this bit here. This is the last kind of resort to bring in the skeleton and make him feel evil, and then just darken his lips. He really feels evil now, just a really evil jerk type of dude. And you don't want to keep the eyebrows emotionless. The angry brow is really a skeleton, a skull, always has angry brows. Every skull looks angry to me. It's just because of the way the bones work. So that's another thing you can pull from with a skeleton. I think this one's intentionally angry. But they all seem to look angry. They have that angry face. These little dots up here read as an angry brow. Here especially. So you guys could, let me just join the chat real quick. You guys could just make him look a little angrier. You'll feel more like a happy-go-lucky show that has this bad guy in him. Because before he just looked like a good guy. He just looked like a good guy who had a purple face, you know? He didn't feel like an evil guy. That's the point. That's the point of today's class. Learn how to paint something that is evil, that has gone past the bad and into the really bad. Let me join the chat real quick. Live control room.
Before he just looked like a good guy.
Whoa, I heard myself. So that's mine. We are small, but we are many. United, we will bring plague and terror to those who underestimate our determination. Nice. I like this. Skull. He's just a skeleton, you know? He feels like a bad guy. So this is amazing. I do recommend in the general drawing itself to use more shadows. This is really, really washed out. You know, I could probably fix it with a quick image adjustments, brightness, contrast. Just bring the contrast all the way up and bring the values down and bring these up. Like some of this would really have affected the form a little better, made the form a little more visible. Before it was just too washed out. So what I did was Control L for the levels and image adjustments, brightness, contrast. Raise the contrast all the way up pretty much. So that was my biggest issue. This is an amazing character design. This is beautiful. This is one of my favorites probably. Quincy, even better. It's probably held together with some sort of magic. Maybe you should have, you know, if he was presented in a story, present him in some sort of cloak and then slowly reveal how devoid of life he is. This is why he's so successful, because he's just a skeleton. Like he's an actual, so evil he's come back from the dead, or he's done actions, or he's accepted some sort of black magic or something like that. Made him look demonic. So that's it. That's all for today. Too much talking. I can't really cover all of them. What I would apply to this one, I love his big mouth. I love his big mouth. I love his eyes, how they're inverted they are. I would just get rid of all of this redness in his face, make him look even more intimidating. Just basically like a dark elf is what he is. And dark elves aren't pink. You can have their ears pink a little bit at the tops because of the subsurface scattering. You can have the hair be pink, but the skin, the actual life in them is gone. And we're nearing grays, lots and lots of grays. And to counteract that, you can make him wear a lot more red. Or you can bring in more red, because all the colors seem a little muted all around. So not considering the face. Sponge, saturate. What am I doing? I would just saturate his clothes. Like that. Bring in some more red. Make him stand out a little. Like this. But I love the dark lips. I love the skeleton you're pulling from. He's handsome, but he feels so evil. And I'd love to see this in some sort of show somehow. I think it would be so cool to see a character like this. But that's it. Thanks everyone for watching today. You guys are awesome. I hope these challenges continue to help you grow. Please don't forget to join them, because they will dress up your portfolio and keep you on your feet, keep you flexible as an artist. Instead of keeping you in your tunnel vision, they will constantly keep you acquainted with your weaknesses, your design weaknesses, and your fundamentals weaknesses, your weaknesses and your skills. So these challenges are there to help you grow, and I hope you guys benefited from them. And I'm going to keep them coming, I promise. And that's it. Have a great day, guys. Bye bye.